If I close my eyes, I can almost smell the earth of my village. I can feel the sun on my face. But when I open them, there is only the stench. It is the stink of sickness, of sweat, and of iron, and of things dying that should not die. I'm lying down, wedged against a wall of other men, skin to skin. There is no space to turn myself. I have not seen the sun properly for weeks. They promised me a fast death if I thought. They lied. This is the truth of being human cargo.
My name is Kwame. I was born a free man, a son of the interior. This is not a fictional story of my life. This is a non-fictional, historically documented account of the process that stole 12.5 million lives. In the next few minutes, we trace my journey from the moment of my violent capture across the death march, through the agonizing sale and branding, and into the suffocating hold of the slave ship. This is everything you need to know about how a human being was systematically broken down and converted into a commodity sold for iron. Watch to witness the truth of the Middle Passage.
It did not start here. It started with a loud crack, like thunder in a clear sky. One moment, I was a free man. I was in my fields, fixing the roof of my hut. The next, I was pinned, dust in my mouth, the weight of 3 men on my back. My own people. They came from the direction of the river, men with no honor, seeking the bounty the white men offered. The shock was the worst wound, the confusion. I tried to shout my name, Kwame, but the blow to my head silenced it. Then came the rope, and the sharp, biting pain of being lashed to another terrified soul. They snatched us from our homes and communities, like ripe fruit falling into a basket. It was done in silence, driven by pure greed. I became merchandise before I understood the word. The march was not a journey. It was a slow, agonizing act of breaking, day after blistering day. The tide was in a line, rope around the neck, 2 by 2 at the ankle. The iron on my skin began to rub the flesh raw, bone hitting bone with every clumsy step. We were forced to walk hundreds of miles for what felt like several moons. If one man stumbled, we both went down. If a man collapsed, too sick or weak to rise, the captors would leave him in the dust. I watched men die, their desperate cries swallowed by the bush. And every time I looked down at the ropes, I knew my life was not my own. It belonged to the chain. The march taught me that resistance only meant a longer pain. Survival meant obedience. We walked for so long that the air itself changed. It tasted salty. Then the sight of the water, the endless, terrifying sea, and standing between us and the horizon, the stone fortresses, their monuments to commerce. They took us inside, stripping us of our clothes, then shoving us into the dungeons, rooms so low you had to crouch to enter. Total, suffocating darkness. We were thousands of people, crammed and left for weeks, sometimes months, waiting for the ships. The floor became coated in filth, and the sickness they called the flux. In the darkness, you could hear the coughing, the praying, and the silence of those who had finally stopped breathing. This was where hope died, suffocated by the stench and the stone.
Then the light. The door opened and they dragged us out, naked, into the blinding sun. They needed to assess their commodity. The white men, their complexions, their long hair, their foreign language, They looked like bad spirits. They lined us up. They stripped me entirely. A white man, sometimes a doctor, would prod me, check my teeth, and toss me up to see if I was sound. They handled my body, discussing my value in words I could not understand. It was clinical, public, and absolute. They took my dignity. I was no longer a warrior or a son. I was simply flesh to be measured for labor. That gaze, that clinical measurement, it stole the core of my manhood and left only an object. The final transaction. After the inspection, the terror of the hot iron. I felt the heat before it touched me. The sound was a terrible, sharp hiss. The pain was immediate, searing, and deeper than any whip. It was the brand, the initials of the company that now claimed my life. This scar, this brand, was the inversion of my culture. It did not mark belonging to a community. It marked me as chattel, a thing of iron and tobacco. Then the final humiliation, forced through the door of no return. One last moment of sun, one last breath of African air before being shoved onto a boat towards those giant wooden machines waiting in the water. The ship. They ripped away any final scrap of clothing I had left, and then the chains came back, heavier, wrapping around my legs. They pushed us below deck, down into the darkness of the hold. We were packed so tightly, side by side, that we were reduced to lying with no space to turn, almost like herrings in a barrel. The heat was suffocating, producing copious perspirations. A short, choked sound, a struggle for air. The air became unfit for respiration from the variety of loathsome smells. The stench of the necessary tubs filled with human waste was everywhere, overflowing onto the decks. The sound was worse than the smell, the endless creaking of the ship, punctuated by the shrieks of the women and the groans of the dying, rendering the whole a scene of horror almost inconceivable. The daily routine was simple: keep the cargo alive, but just barely. They fed us twice a day, meager portions of poor food, often infested with maggots or spoiled. Water was insufficient. They would force us up on deck for exercise, where they made us dance. A low, almost inaudible growl of frustrated exhalation, the pain from the chains cutting into my flesh was constant, unbearable. Sometimes I watched them pull out men who had succumbed to the flux, tossing the bodies over the side into the dark water. The ultimate act of resistance, refusing to eat, choosing death, was denied to us. They forced the instruments down our throats and crammed the food in. I learned then that my misery was my value. Even my will to die belonged to them. For 80 days, sometimes longer, this floating prison was my world. Then the cry, "Land!" But the sight brought no relief. Only the certainty of a renewed round of examinations before being sold again. They had succeeded in transporting the flesh, but what they left behind, the constant shock, the cultural dislocation, the loss of self, that is what lasts. They took my name and replaced it with a mark. They replaced my dignity with shame. They replaced my autonomy with chains. They did this because they viewed me as a tool, and my suffering was simply a necessary cost of doing business. Approximately 12.5 million of us were captured. Nearly 2 million people, my companions, never finished the journey. This is the history they tried to forget. This is what it cost to survive the start of a life in chains.
If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel, like and share to one person, and leave a comment below. Thank you.